Do you feel that homelessness in Army veterans is a growing problem in society?
I don't know about growing, but I know it is a problem.
Yeah.
There is a local charity called Forces in the Community. We as a pub are working with that charity. Not directly yet, but we're building a programme that is to help servicemen who are coming out of the army, soldiers coming out of the army, to help prevent them becoming homeless in the first place. Right. Growing problem. There is an issue when a soldier leaves the armed forces and leaves that family environment that they struggle to fit into the society. And the more conflicts we have, the more likely it is that becomes a problem. Recently with the conflict in Afghanistan, that would create a problem psychologically when a soldier is trying to resettle from that environment. Therefore, when he or she comes out and are struggling in society, that's when they are more likely to become homeless. It could be something like, you get something called denial distortion psychologically, so denying things or distorting things that happen. Psychologically, what that can mean is it pulls you away from it might pull you away from a society that you'd normally operate in. So if you've been in the army and they provided housing, your rent for that housing is taken out, you pay at source. With a serviceman coming out of the army, let's say they go into rented or into private accommodation even and have a mortgage to pay, living in society with its norms being an alien environment to what they're used to, it can cause them to deny or distort things that are happening to them. So if they do get a psychological problem, deny and distort it, things like the importance of paying rent wouldn't fit in with them. And if they're struggling, they may well use something else to self-medicate. So they may turn to drink or even drugs to get away from what is happening in the head. What that means with the deny and distortion is that may mean that they won't pay the rent, or they won't pay the mortgage, they'll go out and get drunk instead, or they'll get smashed instead. That's a generalisation, but it is more likely to happen to somebody who's got a trauma. And I think that's where the problem can be increasing. I personally think it is increasing. I think it goes through phases as we go through bigger conflicts. Afghanistan was a big conflict. The horrors from that. When you're out of that army family, suddenly become apparent to you. You start to deny and distort reality. And it means you isolate yourself. It means that it can mean that you don't prioritise any money you have got, and that can lead to homelessness.
Right. It's the same with the Navy as well.
Yeah.
You're in a room no bigger than this that sleeps between 30 and 48 people. They're in bunks, 3 high, 3 long. Just a walkway by the side of it, and then this area here would be your mess area, where you congregate. In those 30 to 48 people, if you have an issue, one of them will either be going through the same thing or have gone through the same thing, and will be able to give you advice, give you support and help you. Whereas you come from that environment to a one-on-one situation where you're out in the general public and you haven't got the same support as you had. And you can't just turn around and say, what's happening? oh, well, this has happened. Oh, Christ, man, I went through that last year. What I did to get through it is, you haven't got that support.
You haven't got anybody got you back, have you?
No.
Always got somebody got you back.
And I'm not ashamed to say, I did struggle when I left the Navy. I went into rented accommodation, and it was a shared accommodation, but it wasn't with people that knew your background, where you'd been, what you'd done, or what you were struggling with, and you did feel isolated, and I did turn quite heavily to drink. Fortunately, I met a very good woman that sorted me out, and 25 years later she is still upstairs and she still sorts me out. It is a difficult transition from the armed forces to civilian life. And one of the things that did help, stupidly enough, was running a pub.
Yeah.
I said to you, didn't I?
Yeah.
You have people that come in regularly, that some of them have been through some of the stuff that you've been through, and some of them have had the same issues that you have, and that you do talk to them, and you can actually give advice as well, and they will listen, they give you advice. And it is a nice community to be in.
Yeah.
Obviously you get your idiots, but you do with any pubs. But yeah, you do have a community feel to it. It's not just this pub, it was the pub down in Portsmouth as well. But the problem is, when you have an issue, you don't have anyone to turn to or anything. You can't go to your doctor and say, look, I'm struggling with this. That's right, we'll sort you out in 7 months' time.
Yeah. And sometimes you can't go to the doctor full stop because you think
They'll laugh at you.
Yeah.
Well, your feelings are a little bit hurt, but sort your shit out.
Yeah.
Excuse my shit.
Well,
That's right.
Yeah.
sometimes you can't describe it, and sometimes, because you don't even know. You're incongruent. You just do not know that something is wrong. So you know that something is wrong, but you can't put your hand on it.
Yeah.
Typically with me, it's an anniversary of something that has happened in the past. and I just look at the calendar and it'll be November. And there's certain dates in November that I had trauma that, and unfortunately, Remembrance Sunday is in November. So all that combination makes me incongruent. It makes me just ill at ease. And I can't go to a doctor and say, I feel off. Because what does that mean?
Doctor doesn't understand your experiences, I guess.
I could give him the symptoms. I could say, I've had about 2 hours sleep last night, and it's been like that for the last week. And he'll go, oh, insomnia, you need sleeping tablets. It isn't.
Yeah.
It isn't that. So, yeah. Yeah, I absolutely agree with Martin. It's an environment in the pub where it becomes your life. And it's not quite like it is in the army or in the navy, as Martin's describing, where somebody has got your back, or you can always go to somebody and talk to them without causing offence, or somebody who won't hold a grudge against you. That's what you get in the services. A pub's close to that, I think.
Mm. I said to you when we first came in, I said it's the closest I've felt to being at home in a work environment, and by home I mean in the forces. It's as close as you can get without being in the forces.
I've been in long enough to know why that is. It's true, but I couldn't tell you why. Could you?
No, not a clue.
So, do you think then that the comfort of being in the army surrounded by people who are also in the same situation as you after you leave, is it like isolating knowing that they're no longer there with you, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I think it's a bit deeper than that.
Yeah.
I think for many people that join the armed forces, right, we've all got this vision of we're born, we come into a loving family, we're nurtured by that family, we get to the age of somewhere between 16 and 25, well, we'll finish our education off and we'll go off into the big wide world and we'll settle there and get our and life will be good. For a group of people that join the army, and it's a significant number, I couldn't give you the complete stat, but it's somewhere around about 40%. They've come from a background, when you're looking at two of us here, they've come from a background where they could not wait to get away from home. That doesn't mean that our mothers were bad. It means that our need to get away from home was such that we didn't attach to home life. I personally, I think you're the same, could not wait to get out of the home. Mine was my father, he was a bully. And so I left the army not having been through that, what society would see as a normal, nurtured environment.
Yeah, right.
You know, where you're cosy, you fit in with your family.
Yeah.
So at 16 I joined the army. I was there for 25 years. That 25 years was my family, that was my nurturing. So I didn't attach myself to my family, I attached myself to the army. Now when I came out of the army, age 41, I wasn't attached to my family, I was attached to the army. Now you could ask the question, the day after I'd come out, are you a soldier, are you a civilian? Well, the answer should have been, I'm a civilian.
Soldier.
But you're not.
Yeah.
You know, I had 25 years of that nurtured environment, of that environment that I saw as my family. Suddenly it was almost like a bereavement. Poof, I'm not part of that family anymore. And it took years to work that out. That's that incongruence I'm talking about.
Yeah.
In that incongruent period, I went from job to job to job. I went from home to home. I ended up living on the narrowboat because I wanted to. But it was the only place I could settle because I could move the narrowboat and not have to move house. But I was moving all over the place. I was not settling. I wasn't doing it. Every 2 or 3 years I was changing my job, my work, which might not sound bad, but I was giving up some good jobs. And deliberately doing so. And not settling. And I think that's at the core of it. Goes back to your first question. So I've left my family, not attached to it, got into the army, become attached to it. Day after I come out of the army, it's not there anymore.
Yeah.
And there is no replacement. Martin suggests a pub. It probably is the closest. Somewhere you belong.
So, what do you guys think that we could do to help army veterans who don't feel like they fit in society after they've left?
I think a more staggered release into civilian life, and this is just my own personal view, is, you know, if you've been ill for a long time, you get a staggered return to work, where you go in for one day and you have the rest of the week off. You go in for 2 days the next one and you have the rest of the week off.
Right.
Then maybe a staggered return to civilian life may be a better way of doing it, and that's just my thoughts. I know it's totally impractical.
Well, you do it with prisons.
Yeah, it's totally impractical, but would it help veterans integrate into society better and easier? If you were like, right, okay, you've got day release from the army, from the navy, from the air force, you were going to go and work with Rolls-Royce engineering, you're going to go and work with the butcher down the road because that's what you told me you want to do when you leave the forces. You're going to go and work at a mechanic station at wherever. You do a day, you then come back, you carry on doing what you did when you was in the forces, and then the next month it's 2 days a week.
Yeah.
And by the time you get to your six month period, you're doing 5 days a week, coming back for the weekend. So it's almost a reversal of going home on leave.
Yeah.
And whether that would work better, but I don't know whether the infrastructure would be able to support it. I know we do get your EVTs, your education vocation training,
Yeah.
you get a month of it, but you literally, you go to college, you come back, you go to college, you come back, and you go to college for 1-2 days a week.